Coming at you all the way from Arbitrum, it's the Magic Hour Podcast.
This is Alan.
Dionysus.
And Braiker. Produced by Digital Strategies Guild. Listeners, we have a wonderful guest today. We have Dale Denton from the Smol Age team to talk about his project, or their project, I should say. Dale, welcome to the podcast.
What's up? Thanks for having me.
Of course. You actually sound really clear and crystal. Great mic, I guess. That will play out really well on the recorded audio. But before we get into the conversation, I wanted to, again, thank you for inviting us to host the Trove Showcase. It was a great time. Personally, I really enjoyed it. What made you reach out to us, or me, or
dude, for the Trove Showcase?
Mhm.
So me and X, I kind of had that idea, and I brought it to X, and I was like, look, like Trove isn't doing a whole lot to promote the launch partners outside of the one Facebook post that they made, and I'm like, these people. Like, I'm a marketer, I'm a sales guy. I've done dozens of AMAs for just the treasure ecosystem. I've done dozens of AMAs for Smol Age. Like, I can create those relationships, book that in, do the stuff logistically. And, like, I feel like that is kind of lacking from your typical, project leader standpoint, right? They don't necessarily know how to build those relationships or get their name out there. I was like, so Trove should be that, that outlet for them to at least have one solid AMA with like the official team. And X was like, yeah, man, I can carve out an hour a week to do that. And our thought was, okay, so do we want someone officially from the treasure team like X to host it? Or do we want to more so lean on community members who have their followings of their own and kind of make it a real like grassroots thing? So the idea was every episode was going to have 2 to 3 projects and a new host, and that host was going to be someone who like has a track record of hosting or just, being involved in the community. So, ultimately, like, you guys were an obvious choice because you have one of the only podcasts in the ecosystem, if not the only podcast in the ecosystem. And I was like, we should reach out to these guys and see if they're willing to host.
Well, again, thank you for thinking of us. That's a great story. I recognize that we are one of the only podcasts in the ecosystem. I hope that there are others that want to kind of get involved and build a community. But for the most part, I think, it's important for everyone who's in this space to be able to find out about some of these projects however they can, because sometimes you can miss something. And that's really like what drives us for doing this. That
Dude,
is
100%. And there's so much going on everywhere. And I get it, dude. I mean, I'm in, how many Discords are you in? 100 at least. How many Discord notifications do you wake up to every day? I probably wake up to 250 Discord notifications every day, and the majority of them come from my unread folder, right? So like I just go there and right click and mark as unread. But like even the ones I want to follow, it's like I got 50, 60 notifications to sift through to see what the important stuff is.
You're absolutely right. And believe it or not, I guess it's funny because we're going to talk about how you got into Web3 in a second, but I've been using Discord exclusively for the NFT stuff since about August of 2021. And I think it was about a month ago where I discovered the inbox icon and where to read all those unreads and the mentions. And I'm like, and before that, I was just scrolling through some of my Discords. Like, was I actually mentioned? I was searching my name. I didn't even know that was a thing.
Dude. Okay, so I've clicked on this before, but I'm looking at it right now. I do not utilize this near enough.
I know, me neither. I was just, I was very surprised that I could even do that. I'm like, finally, I can get rid of all these notifications at once. Because I just stopped caring.
I don't think many people know about this. Yeah, I gotta start using this more. That's good to know, dude. Thanks for the tip.
Hey, you're welcome. So, I kind of hinted at it before, but where were you in life when you discovered Web3 and crypto and what grabbed your attention? Like, what was interesting about it for you?
So there was a very big window of time from when I discovered it and when I actually started participating in it. I mean, dude, I knew about Bitcoin in 2012 2012 when people were buying drugs on the internet with it, you know? So, like, I had friends that bought Bitcoin for pennies when we were in college.
Oh, wow. So you were in very early like I was.
But I never bought any. Dude, I bought my first bag of crypto early last year, 2021. So I knew about it for a long time. And then I had a really good buddy who was like early into ETH. He's a Bitcoin maxi. I mean, he was telling me about it deeply in 2016, 2017, 2018. I didn't understand it. I thought it was a scam. And then last year, right, like we had that massive pump in Q1 2021.
Right.
That's kind of when I got on that train.
Okay.
So that was when I bought my first bag of ETH, bought my first like bit of Bitcoin. I think I really only put, like 5-6K fiat into it. And then I dabbled in some shit coins last summer, got wrecked on a couple of them, FIBA, SafeMoon, Floki, all went to zero. Didn't buy the tops, but I bought close to the top on all three of those. And then, dude, I mean, I had heard about NFTs and all this stuff last year. I really didn't get it. I was like, why are people spending thousands of dollars on pictures of monkeys? And then when I really started getting balls deep into Web3 was when I heard about Wizards and Dragons. And
Great
have you heard of that project before?
Yes.
Okay, so I aped into Wizards and Dragons. Like everything that I had in crypto, converted it to ETH, got it into a MetaMask, bought as many Wizards and Dragons as I possibly could. And dude, since then it's kind of been, I've really been deep into everything. So I met Sonny through the W&D project. He was kind of a whale in that game. And I don't know what you know about W&D, but basically they launched, it was a Wolfgame fork. They launched in late November. I got in early December, so I kind of bought the Pico top of that. And mid to late December, right? Magic had a really big run up from 40 cents to $4.
Right.
And I bought the top of Magic in early January. And since I kind of got in the treasure ecosystem, I've just been balls deep, and I've always, since I kind of found the world, I wanted to build in it and bring the marketing and sales and communications and just general business knowledge that I have into the space. And Delorvi, the founder of Smol Age, gave me a shot.
Awesome. Oh, good on you for being able to kind of make that leap. I also was in Wizards and Dragons. I somehow lucked out and was minted a dragon, and then nice. I immediately sold it because I was like, good, I'm able to get out of this. I was also concerned because they kept turning it off, they kept pausing it. So I was like, as soon as I could get out, I did.
Good call.
But so really, this is your first bear market, then, is what you're telling me.
It is, yes.
Well, don't worry, there'll be plenty of them. But I think what's interesting for this, at least for this particular bear, is a couple things. One, the ecosystem and the market, well, not the market, I should say more like the ecosystem and entire Web3 space is what I would say is a lot more mature now than it was previous bears, which is natural to speak of because we keep kind of iterating on things. And then it also feels like it's moving faster because the previous bear that we were in was it started in 2017. And I remember it was a good slow descend down to some really low levels. I think ETH went below 100 at one point and Bitcoin was down below 10K. And we might see those levels again. I don't think so based on kind of the ways that I've seen the graphs go. But it seems like it's going a lot quicker, and maybe the potential recession has something to do with that. But we're not here to talk about the bad news. We're here to talk about Smol Age. And before we get into Smol Age, well, I guess you already discussed how you discovered Magic. But, one more thing I wanted to ask you was, what does the small movement mean to you? I know that there are a lot of people who are into smalls. Do you feel that sense of community?
Dude, yeah. I mean, I love the smalls, and the whole ecosystem in itself was just it was such an eye-opener to me because I'd gotten into, W&D was really my first NFT project to get into, and I didn't really understand this idea of like community in Web3 until you actually spend some time in Discord and see what's going on, right? And like, dude, like I didn't make my first Twitter account until like mid-December. So it's like, I didn't get that aspect of it either. But once you see enough like crappy L1 projects where like literally the only conversation in the Discord is about the floor and how much money everybody is going to make, that's when you kind of realize like you find the better communities that are genuinely there to have fun. And I know like, dude, like I'm not going to sit here and say that people aren't in treasure ecosystem or aren't like buying smalls for some financial gains, right? Like that's...
No, it's part of the reason that we're in this space too, because we understand that there's a lot of potential there.
Exactly, that as well. But it's like, I mean, the line that like is funny, and I know people, you know, say it to like kind of troll or like get a laugh or whatever, but it's like, you know, even if everything does go to zero, like the connections and the friendships that I've made along the way like have genuinely been worth it.
I agree.
So,
and for me, I came from a traditional finance background. I was working for, well, it's kind of like hospitality and finance, but now I've made so many different connections that are really genuinely great people and are building in this space. I count you as part of those people, but I think that there's something here that's really captivating. Like, it's more than just what we're doing. I think that there really is some sort of movement behind this. At least that's the way I feel.
I agree, dude. And like I've spent a lot of time, more hours than I would like to admit, you know, surfing Discord, surfing CT, surfing OpenSea, looking at charts, trying to understand the industry and the movement. And like, I have not found anything like the treasure ecosystem.
That's for sure. And
it doesn't exist right now in Web3, and I think it is the most exciting thing going on. That being said, right, like there's a lot of work to do to really execute on this vision from the team perspective, and like, you know, just like the adoption of L2 as a whole, right? That's a different conversation, but from the vision to the, you know, actual fundamentals to the community aspect to like the creativeness of the projects within the ecosystem, that is it. These guys are really pioneering something, and I want to be a part of it.
I agree with you, and that's the way I feel too, as does Dion and Alum. You know, that's part of the reason we started this podcast too. But I will say also, you know, their plans are to go beyond L2. And I don't know if that's been confirmed, but I hear it kind of discussed in different channels that they want to go beyond Arbitrum and, you know, be like, I guess, that omni-chain approach, if you will. I don't know if it'll come to fruition this year or in the future, but, you know, I think it's definitely worth exploring. But also what I really like too is they're focused on everybody connecting with one another. Like, you know, there are Discords where everybody can network with one another separate from like the main Discord, you know, like, or the main project Discord or anything like that, which I think is like super important. It's helping everybody connect, share resources, if you will. Not everybody can do everything. So it's really kind of giving everyone the opportunity to find what they need if they don't have it, kind of thing. And I feel like that's really important too, because it helps all of you guys who are building these projects build them as good as you can be, and even kind of bounce ideas off each other.
100%, man. And like that's what I like about having like a more ecosystem type approach, because it's like the better one of our projects does, like the sum of the parts is less than what the whole is valued at, right? Like there's really that synergy effect, if you will. I mean, like you don't get that on L1 when you're building a standalone project. So like I think that's just like a super exciting and creative thing. And like Mike Crypto, you know, him and I were doing quite a few AMAs in like March, April for like various L1 communities, and like his point was always like the network effect is going to be unfathomable, with like dozens of projects launching on Trove, more projects launching from the treasure ecosystem. All of those projects are going to have their own collabs, their own partners. Like it's going to get deep, but it is also just nice to like go into the treasure networking chat or go into the treasure, you know, Discord and be able to bounce ideas off of people that are genuinely invested and like have a good insight to give as well.
Absolutely. and you're not wrong. And I think that's one of the most exciting things for me, at least, because with the amount of projects that are being developed and teams that are working, and with Trove launching, I think that there really is this network effect, like you said. So hopefully it all comes to fruition. I think it will. I think, we're on the right path. And, I think the next 6 to 12 months will kind of show us what we've got.
It's going to be an interesting time, and like, dude, if Treasure started in May last year and got to really, capitalize on that back end of the bull run, it would be insane. But, we didn't, and like, we're going to have to fight through these times and see what happens. But I am highly convicted and bullish for the future.
Me too. But again, we're here to talk about Smol Age. I was doing some research on your project. I think it's very interesting. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how the project came about?
So the project was founded by Delorvi, who's our main artist, and his initial idea for the project was really just a double derivative PFP, and the original name was Smol Obits, deriving of small brains and the popular L1 project called Obits. And dude, it was literally just going to be a PFP project was the initial vision. I had gotten into the Discord, I don't know if you remember, but mid-January time, a ton of Arbitrum projects were hopping up on Twitter. In the meta was have a private Discord, drop a temporary Discord link. And it was dude, honestly, full disclosure, I was between jobs in real life. So I had it all the time in the world, and I was just camping on Twitter all day, trying to get in these Discords early and get OG spots or whitelist spots or whatever. Got into the Smol Obits Discord, saw that Delorvi didn't have a mod team, it was just him. And the Discord at the time was also Smol Obits combined with his other projects that he's done, because he's launched a Solana project, he's launched another project on L1, just strictly art based. So it was kind of interesting, and I just reached out to him. I was like, hey dude, I've been trying to find a mod position in a project. I see you don't have one, would love to hop on board. He brought me on board. Him and I really hit it off. Around the same time, there was quite a big narrative that was getting ahead of the curve for quote unquote bad actors, if you will. And I don't know if you remember that, right? All the drama and the FUD with Smolians. And then obviously there was a couple small rugs in March, April time frame, small printer, small penis. And so we were seeing the backlash from the community, which say about it what you will, right? It's a very protective sense. Everybody was kind of the protective dad, and they didn't want their daughter to start dating any boys, but they knew that it was inevitably going to happen. So the best option is okay, well, if she's going to date boys, we just want to make sure that the boys are good, right? So we wanted to be that good boy, if you will, to the small community. And we started painting this bigger vision of no, we're not just a PFP project of a double derivative. We want to tell the story of how the Smolverse in its entirety developed, right? So that was kind of where it started, and that's kind of how it transitioned into what we are today, which is Smol Age. We wanted to build something bigger. We didn't just want to be a PFP, and that's kind of how things have progressed.
Cool. And so you jumped in the Discord, you asked for a mod role, if you will, and you just became a part of it. Really cool. See, anybody in this space can join one of these projects if you show enough activity. And I think that speaks to the Web3 mantra, if you will. We're all kind of working together.
Dude, 100%. And I tell people all the time, whatever, dude, there's a need for in real life skills in the Web3 space. I think there's a gap with sales skills, there's a gap with marketing skills, there's a gap with communication skills, there's a gap with project management skills, and projects need that.
I am literally going to take that clip right there and send it to my friend who I was just talking to about this yesterday, because he's not happy where he's at. He's a human resources professional. And I was like, I don't think you understand. You could probably help so many different projects with your skill set that they may not have, because they're probably looking for people. They're probably letting people go, separate, you can be that guide for them that they would need, And so you just saying that kind of cemented exactly the way I feel as well.
Dude, 100%, man. And it's like, it's such an interesting space because you do need to put yourself out there, right? And like my personality, right? Like I'm a sales and marketing guy, right? Like I've spent thousands and thousands of hours on the phones. I've marketed myself all over social media for my in real life stuff. I currently do like independent consulting. So like I have to go out and hunt for my own clients consistently. And like if you are going to get a chance in this space, you really do kind of got to put yourself out there and like, be able to dig into the pain points of these projects that they probably can't see themselves. Absolutely. And be able to kind of convince them to like give you that shot.
Absolutely. 100%. When we started this, we didn't know if we were going to get any interest, and we've now got dozens of followers. But, it's, we're not afraid to be putting ourselves out there either. So I'm happy that you said that.
That's the thing, man. And that's life in general, right? Like you got to be able to put yourself out there if you're going to make anything, and you're going to have critics along the way. But it's like, not to turn this into like a motivational podcast, but it's like anybody could truly make it in anything, and especially in this Web3 space where the possibilities are endless and there's so much opportunity.
For sure. And it's okay if this is a motivational podcast, because I think that's also part of it too. Like we want to introduce people not just to your projects, but who you are as a person, but also what's so great about Web3. And I hope that at some point someday this podcast can grow beyond Magic and the Arbitrum Network to be able to share these types of thoughts and ideas with everybody who or they find magic through the podcast, if you will. Either way. We are getting off the rails a little bit. That's okay. But now you mentioned a couple team members. Who is the team behind Smol Age?
All right. So Delorvi is our founder. He's our main artist. He started the whole thing, ended up bringing me on board. Super grateful for that. I am, I guess, like the product lead, project manager, really just coordinating all of the different departments. I sold our council passes one by one to raise a little bit of seed funding up front. I recruited and hired the dev team. I've worked with Delorvi in terms of the lore and the art. I've worked with our tokenomics expert, Kurtz, in terms of like the tokenomics and the game mechanics. So we have Kurtz, who's our token. Go ahead.
No. Have they built any previous projects?
So Delorvi has done some art-based projects, like I had said earlier. Kurtz, dude, honestly, like, so I know he's worked on some projects in the past, but he's a big, like, in real life finance guy, right? So he knows a lot about, like, the finance space, venture capital. He's raised a lot of funds, but, like, honestly, I haven't asked him to fully dox himself to me. We have this, like, unspoken, just, like, he's a New York guy, like, I have New York roots, like, we are no bullshit to each other, like, we probably talk on the phone, like, 3 to 5 hours a week, like, we're just on the same wavelength, and we can tell. But he has a pretty, hefty background in like, the finance space. So he's been a great addition.
And so those are, like, the main team members? I know.
No, dude, we're not even close to the main team members. Then we have Maz, who is our head Solidity dev. Super talented kid. He's worked on a DeFi project called Trident DAO. I don't know if you've heard of it. I don't think it's like massive, but he's done all of the Solidity for them. He's currently interning at Microsoft.
Oh, wow. Good for him.
Super smart kid, dude. We just got our full audit back.
Awesome.
For the 4 contracts that he built, and there is literally one at-risk situation in the contracts, and it is the contracts might be too inefficient and gas heavy. So like that's incredible from like a dev standpoint, that like there's no major security issues. The biggest issue is inefficiency in gas, and dude, we're gonna be on Arbitrum, so it's like, well, I don't even know if that's gonna be in the scope of fixing that. But that's Maz, our Solidity dev. Then we have Whiskey, who's like kind of back end, front end. He's done a great job bridging the Solidity to the front end. And then we have Steven and Snuff, who are UI designers and like UI coders, making sure everything's functional on the front end. We also have MacGyver, who is our community manager. And then we brought in a temporary community consultant. His name is Saint. That dude has worked on like some massive L1 projects, and he's kind of been training up Mac to be that like self-sufficient community manager. Because similar thing with Mac, right? Like he just put himself out there. He didn't really have Web3 space. He didn't have community management space, but he reached out to me. He knew that I needed someone to kind of take the community duties off of my plate. And he reached out, loved his attitude, loved his ability to communicate, and I gave him a shot. And then we kind of realized like, okay, well now you actually need to be like self-sufficiently trained in the actual like ways to effectively manage the community. So we brought in Saint. And then we also have Birchtold, who is our graphic designer.
Cool. Sounds like a very well-rounded team.
We got 10 people. It came from Delorvi making a PFP project to him hiring a couple mods to now we have 4 devs, a tokenomics guy, 2 community managers, an artist, a graphic designer, and me.
Well, I think then you guys will definitely find success. It seems like there are a lot of teams out there that are, at least that we've spoken to, that are like 1 or 2 people, and they might be very talented. But I think if you're really trying to build that community, like you said, you need to have some people, right? You can't just be one person.
Yeah, dude, and I think, being brutally honest, people underestimate what it takes to
start
have a successful project here. You know, like, yeah. Dude, it's all of this stuff. It's not just like art and dev work. It's marketing, communications, managing the community, managing the moderator team, the tokenomics, the game mechanics, all of the documents associated with that, funding, paying people. It's like, dude, like, it's a lot. And like, I underestimated it myself, but I also have no problem admitting when like I'm overextended and this is out of my zone of genius and I need help.
Well, that's good, because I think that quality right there is a very difficult one for most people to embrace, if you will, because we're all capable of it, right? We're all capable of recognizing when we're overwhelmed or we have too much on our plate, but to be humble enough to ask for help, that's not something that is an easy pill for most people to swallow, or some people to swallow, I should say. I'm not going to assume most people are
100%, dude. And I don't know. I mean, like, so for me, again, my background, sales, marketing, the job that I ended up leaving back in the fall, it was a culture that was like, if you are not, executing on your job well, and you're not asking for help and putting your ego aside, that's a massive red flag. So like from a cultural standpoint, I want to build that on the Smol Age team of, guys, it's okay if we need help. Like we can go find the help. Like, let's just be real about what we need and be open and honest on what we can individually execute. And then whatever gaps we need to fill, I guarantee you, I promise you that I will get them filled for us.
Well, I find the Smol Age project really interesting. I love the lore behind it. Kind of like the first Smols telling the history of the Smolverse, if you will. Who's responsible for the lore? Dude,
me and Delorvi kind of tag team the lore. Being in marketing, like I have a decent, copywriting skill set, and just like the story and kind of like the vocabulary that we've used, that's more so been Delorvi. Actually kind of putting it on paper and like delivering the lore, that's more so been myself.
Got it. And then why is your collection size 5678? Is that the amount of Smols there are in the space?
No, I think like the small cap is like 16K. I know only like 13K have been minted, but like some of the team hasn't minted their allotment or whatever. With Smol Age, we wanted to have a smaller collection initially. And initially the size was 3,069, just for the culture. Then we bumped it up to 4,269, again, for the culture. And this was because, right, like the Discord opened in June. We gave 1,500 spots to Small, Swall, and Obits holders through Collabland. We realized, okay, this is going to be a much bigger scope and we don't know when, we're going to launch. But we increased to 4,269. And then even through like mid-March, I was like, dude, like we have like 300 whitelist spots left. Like we need to increase it again because we're looking at like a mid-June, late June launch date at this point from a dev perspective. So that's what we did. And 5,678, we landed on that just because of like we're telling this story of progression, right? The development of the Smol Age. And I think 5,678, 5678, it's a progressive number.
Now I understand.
That was kind of the idea behind it.
I like that little story right there. Gives your project character for sure.
Thanks. Yeah, nobody's asked that question, so I appreciate you asking that.
Well, I'm always interested in collection sizes because I think there's certainly a too small amount and there's also a too large amount. But everybody, chooses like 8,000, 9,000, 10,000. 3,000, and like you said, the 42069 for the memes kind of thing. But I find some level of parallel between the linear nature of your collection size number and the project that you guys are building, because there's a very linear progression with the what are they called, Neandersmalls?
Yep, Neandersmalls.
Yeah, so and correct me if I'm wrong. Basically, from what I understand, you're going to mint the Neandersmal, you're going to stake them and earn these bones tokens, and then after you've earned an amount of bones tokens, you're able to then choose they get common sense, which I love that. I love that idea. And then after that, they can start building their other skills. Can you give me a more kind of detailed understanding of how that whole process works and why you guys planned it that way?
Yeah, yep. So basically, like this first generation of Smol Age, right, is the Neandersmalls. And we want to be able to like be flexible in our storytelling. And I think like this one idea of we don't want every NFT collection in the Smol Age story to have infinite utility. So like this first generation of Neandersmalls is going to have finite utility. And it's going to be broken down into 4 phases. The first phase is all about developing your foundational skill, which is common sense, right? And we've modeled this from the Small Brain's IQ mechanic. We just put our own little spin on it in that you don't just earn common sense by staking. You also you earn bones by staking, and those bones will actually need to be staked again in order to develop the common sense of your Neandersmal.
Okay. So double staking.
Exactly. It's double staking. So the way the timeline's going to work out, and I'm still like working out these final details on it. We are going to have a phase 1 game guide before we actually launch, looking at launching that on Friday the 24th. So that's going to get into like the nitty gritty details. But basically in terms of staking your Neandersmal, phase 1 is going to be anywhere from like 110 to like 130 days. We're flexible on that because we need to see how many people stake, how many bones they're staking. We need to make sure the economy is going to be balanced in terms of skill sets and bones emissions. But you'll be able to choose how long you lock your Neandersmal for. Depending on how long you lock it will determine your emission rate of the bones, how many bones you're earning per day. And then you have to claim and lock up those bones, and more bones locked for longer will give you more common sense points, is basically the gist of it.
Gotcha. And then your common sense points will translate into one of 3 different skill sets. I think it was like magic, warrior, or farming. Is that
so
correct?
there's mystics, there's farmers, and there's fighters. And that's what you're going to develop in phase 2. Now, depending on how many common sense points, you're going to be classified. Okay. And you're going to be classified into a unskilled Neandersmal, a skilled Neandersmal, or a master Neandersmal.
Nice.
Okay. Depending, right, like unskilled Neandersmals aren't even going to have the option to develop their primary skill in phase 2.
Okay, so it's almost like you want to ensure that you have enough common sense in your staking, or else you're just going to get assigned a skill.
Exactly. Right, like if your game plan is I want to fully develop my Neandersmal and be able to develop this primary skill, and I want to basically unlock that, then you're going to need to develop your common sense to the full extent.
Now, will the assigned skills, will they be assigned based on what resource isn't or is limited compared to the other two? I guess I'm not asking this question correctly. It's kind of like, you said there's farmers, fighters, and mystics. Like if all these Smols chose to become fighters and mystics, will the assigned ones be farmers first because there's a lack of that particular skill set in this ecosystem or project?
So the idea is like, dude, like we need a balanced economy in the prehistoric Smallverse. Right. And I do get it, right? Like mystics and fighters are probably a little bit more attractive than like a farming skill set. But like, bro, Neandersmals need food. Like we need farmers. So we're still working out some of these details, but I believe how it's going to be implemented. And if you're listening, this isn't set in stone, but I believe what we're going to implement is there's going to be a capacity in the contracts that will develop each of those primary skills.
Gotcha. So there can only be X, well, in this particular potential iteration, there can only be X amount of fighters and X amount of mystics. So, yes, you can choose it up to a certain point, but
if it's capped out, then you can't. Right? Just like I can choose which law school I go to a certain point, but one, if I want to get into Yale, I better be really freaking smart. Two, Yale has a capacity on how many people they bring into it.
Well, 5678 is not divisible by 3. So.
It isn't. Right. So, but again, in phase 1, not everybody is going to develop their common sense far enough.
True.
To where they will even be able to develop their primary skill in phase 2.
Makes sense.
So there's going to be those unskilled Neandersmals. And those unskilled Neandersmals aren't just going to be sitting on the sidelines in phase 2. They're going to have some jobs that they're going to have to do that are not necessarily favorable.
As I've kind of talked to many projects, I start to kind of think about the fun experiences that I've had with NFTs and interacting with them. And one of the projects that I had the most, I want to say, entertainment and excitement was, were you at all familiar with Anonymice?
I know Anonymice. We collabed with them. We gave them some whitelist spots.
Cool.
I don't know the project super well.
That's okay.
But I know it's popular.
That's fine. What I was going to say was they had a really unique minting process, and I think they were one of the first projects to require staking of your NFTs to earn a token. But what was really awesome about their minting process was, with the staking, there was also a burning mechanism where you could burn your NFT to create a new one that had a rarity. And this resulted in this like really exciting game theory race where people were staking to create more mice, but they were also burning to reduce the supply of mice. And, it was a really fun experiment, but it's a long-winded way of saying, do you have any plans for any type of burning mechanism in your project? And I ask that because I think that it does add a level of complexity as well as potential for some really unique ways of interacting with the game.
So from a Neandersmal standpoint, no.
Mm-hmm.
But Neandersmals are not going to reproduce from like an ERC 721 standpoint. There's not going to be like Neandersmal kids.
Gotcha.
From a resource development standpoint, which phase 3 is going to be all about producing these resources that are specific to the primary skills that people are developing, those resources will have a deflationary mechanism to them.
Cool. And do you guys plan on, well, I know you mentioned that you're going to have a Magic Bones LP. Is there any other plans to integrate magic or treasures or any assets from any other projects within your gameplay at some point?
Good question. So I get this question a lot. We are giving some utility to small treasures for liquidity providers.
Okay.
Small treasures will kind of act as like an LP rewards multiplier.
Mm-hmm.
So think of Atlas Mine, right?
Yeah, like the Atlas Mine works.
Yep, exactly. You get a V boost in the Atlas mine. Your V boost is a percentage of the entire V boost, and then that determines your share of the daily emissions of magic.
Hmm.
Similar thing. So small treasures will create a multiplier for your LP rewards points, and then your LP rewards points divided by the total amount of LP rewards points will determine your share of the LP rewards emissions. And that's a separate contract outside of where the main liquidity pool is on Magic Swap when that launches.
And this isn't a critique on your project. This is more about, I personally have seen many projects with similar functionality to yours. You know, we create NFTs, we stake them for tokens, and then, you know, once they're staked, then they can generate some other resources, etc. What would you say sets Smol Age apart from other NFT projects we've seen in this space?
Good question, man. And I know everybody says the same thing, but like I truly believe we have a really sweet lore, and we have a ton of like possibilities in terms of where we can go creatively, right?
Yeah.
Since our vision is this greater vision of telling the story of how the Smallverse developed, like we can do generation after generation through time period after time period. And it's like, it could truly like go on infinitely if we wanted it to, right?
Right.
I think the difference between something like Wizards and Dragons is like, bro, let's be brutally honest. Those guys weren't prepared for shit after phase one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right?
You're right. You know, you have to have a plan.
Yeah.
And just thinking about it now, like what you're saying, I love that idea. And, you know, when I was talking about the burning, like, would you potentially maybe burn your Neander Small to send them to the next era? Because I think I read that that in your white paper that Neander Smalls will have finite utility, right? Is that a correct statement? Or was I wrong?
So they will have finite utility. We're still thinking through, like, okay, do we want to burn the Neander Smalls to go on to the next one, or do we just want holders of Neander Smalls to be able to mint the next generation? Like, what is that going to look like? We're still playing with that.
That's fine. And you know what, though? I do like the storytelling aspect, because I think that is something that people are flocking to. And I say that because I look at first how everyone was really excited about the different events that took place in Smallverse when it first launched. And you had the land, and then your house popped up, and then you had the car, and then the volcano, and you had to fly off to the moon or whatever. You know, I think that captured everybody's excitement and got people interested. And then more recently, I know this is not an L2 project, but the Goblin Town thing was fantastic. I don't know if you've been following it, but
oh yeah,
for me, I think those guys were geniuses, just in the way they not only kind of captured people's attention, but the way they introduced the team, their like little videos, the commitment to the personality of the Goblin, everything.
Yeah.
It was really well done. And I think that type of thing is what's going to set certain projects apart. So I really like when you said, well, we're going to tell the story of Smalls from Neanderthals until now. I think I love that. That's the kind of thing that gets me interested.
And I think that's what gets people, like, everybody kind of wants their own thing, right? Like, some people are attached to the lore and the characters and the story. Some people are farm and dumpers, and they're just in it for the financial gain. Some people are in it for the community. Some people are in it to say that I have the most fully developed Neander Small and all of these resources, and I'm the biggest player in the game, right? So it's like, it's interesting, man, because there's so many like different psychological reasons why people make decisions. But I do think from just like a storytelling perspective specifically, we have a ton of possibilities here. And I'm excited about that. And like, we've thrown a ton of ideas around about what future generations can look like. And we've thrown a ton of ideas around of like what phase 4 of even, you know, the Neander Small generation is going to look like, because that's still kind of up in the air. But yeah, I think lore can be a very attractive thing for some people, depending on who it is.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, not everybody's going to get into the story. I mean, maybe that part of my interest in sci-fi and fantasy novels probably lends itself to me
Probably
leaning
something
into
to
that.
do with it.
But I like it, and I think that I'm looking forward to when you guys launch. So you said your mint date is the 24th?
No, we're dropping hopefully the Phase 1 game guide on the 24th.
The 24th is when your gameplay guide comes out, so that's going to be 4 days from the day this podcast launches. And I think I'm looking forward to it, to learning more about Neander Smalls and Smol Age. Did you take the name from Ice Age, or you just decided Smol Age was what it was going to be?
Dude, it kind of did come from Smol Age. We were just playing around with this, like, okay, well, we definitely don't want to be small obits. And if we want to create a name that's aligned with this bigger vision of telling the story of how the entire Smallverse developed, we were like, okay, well, the prehistoric times were just like one slither of history. What about the Middle Ages? What about the Bronze Age? What about the Industrial Age? So it's like, that's kind of where the name came from. Also, what about the Ice Age, right? Like, maybe there's going to be some Eskimo-Smalls someday. But yeah, that's kind of where, like, that name came from is, okay, if we want to tell this through multiple periods of time, age is probably the most appropriate word to use here.
Dale, I want to say thank you very much for joining. I don't have any more questions, but is there anything that you want to share with the listeners? I know we covered a broad range of topics, and we talked about a lot of things.
This is coming out Monday, right?
Yes, sir. The 20th.
Okay, so if you're listening, you still have 2 days. We are doing 5 pre-mint raffles for whitelist.
Okay.
One of them is public. You literally only need the verified role in our server in order to enter that raffle. The other 4 are for small brains holders, small bodies holders, imbued souls from Life NFT, if you're holding that.
That's me.
Say that again?
I said that's me because I don't have any smalls.
Beautiful. And then also Legion's auxiliary holders. So if you hold any of those NFTs, join the server, verify through Collabland, and then join the pre-mint link. We're doing 100 whitelist spots each for those collections and 250 for the public pre-mint. We have a ton of whitelist spots that were given out last minute. Registration for people that have the whitelist number 2 role is currently going on. The week of the 20th, we're dropping our white paper phase 4. Our white paper part 4. We're dropping a tokenomics white paper. We're dropping our phase 1 game guide. Shit, man. That's really it. Jump in the Discord, have fun. Our mods are in there consistently playing games for whitelist spots last minute, and join those pre-mint raffles, and we're pumped to release. I think in terms of the release, like as of now, it's still going to happen in June. You can kind of do the math on like what you could probably narrow the dates in June down to like 3 days at this point. But we are going to do an instant reveal. There will be a whitelist phase at 0.01 ETH, then public will be 0.03 ETH price point, and sometime after mint out we will open staking. That's kind of going to depend on the dev team. We'll be close to aligning like mint out with launching staking, but there's going to be somewhere between a 3 and, to be honest, like 3 and 15 day lag time between mint out and staking.
Understood. Yeah, you want to make sure everything's working appropriately. But that's a lot. I think I'm going to jump in the Discord and sign up for all those pre-mint raffles that I can. And Dale, thank you for joining. It was a pleasure talking with you, chatting with you, and again, appreciate being available on such short notice. And that concludes another episode of Magic Hour, friends. If you like what you hear, please like and subscribe to our YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you can listen to your podcasts. You can also follow us on Twitter at Magic Hour Pod. All the links are found on our link tree, which is in the show notes. From all of us, we appreciate your support for Bridge World.